Hello, everyone.
Hi, doing.
So we are waiting for at least one additional historic review board member to join us. So that we have a quorum to begin the meeting. So that the historic review board can provide a recommendation to staff for Z0306-24 and potentially the Goal 5 rulemaking for cultural areas.
We should give it a few more minutes to see if any of the other members are just struggling to get on.
We know that Pam has a conflict tonight and that Megan has a conflict.
Yep.
But we are expecting Paul and potentially Howard.
Correct.
Hey, Joy, is a filler. So after tonight, let's say we approve it, what actually happens? Can you just kind of take me through that process?
Sure. So the Historic Review Board is an advisory board that provides guidance to staff. And then staff considers your recommendation and drafts a decision. That is usually done within a week of your meeting. The staff decision will be issued and the 12-day appeal period will start. And people are able to appeal the decision if they submit an appeal form within those 12 days. If no one appeals, then the staff decision becomes final. And the applicant is able to apply for a building permit. This case is a Measure 49 claim, and so the state authorized the home. And so there's no other land use applications other than the Historic Review Board consideration. Last month, the Historic Review Board considered a home that was a replacement home in the exclusive farm use zone. And there was a second concurrent land use application for the replacement of the existing 1950s home. In other circumstances, if for some reason the property was not a Measure 49 property, but it was on an area that had a historic landmark, then they could apply for a land use application to have a dwelling not in conjunction with farm use, or a lot of record dwelling, or a dwelling with conjunction of farm use. And I am using the EFU zoning regulations because that's what we are considering tonight.
Well, we have 4 people. We may as well get this show on the road. Welcome, everybody. Hopefully Paul will chime in at some point, because I know he has a lot to say always. So welcome aboard, and let's get the show on the road and take it away, Joy.
Paul joined as an attendee, and I just promoted Paul to be a panelist. And so bear with me as I get my presentation up and ready to share. So we are here to consider new construction on a 2-acre site that is adjacent to the home and the site that the Historic Review Board considered in August. So a lot of these images and slides will look familiar because it is part of the same historic landmark overlay zone that you all considered in August. It's a farm complex in part of the South Malala Prairie Historic Landscape District, which, as we discussed in August, was never designated by the Board of County Commissioners, as far as we know. And there are no design requirements in the South Malala Prairie Historic Landscape District.
May I ask a question since I missed August?
Yeah.
Landscape district is defined as what?
It's
How does
not defined because it was not adopted as a historic district. So that's a good question because 707 has historic the provision to allow consideration of a historic district. It has historic landmarks, and then it has historic corridors. In Clackamas County, the one historic corridor that has been designated is the Barlow Trail. So any development that is proposed within a 20 or 40 foot wide corridor on either side of the Barlow Trail has to be considered by the Historic Review Board. When a site is identified as being historically significant due to architectural features or association with historic events, then that site can be designated as a historic landmark.
And that's
A
the case with this one, right?
Yes, this is a historic landmark. A historic district is an area that has historically significant structures from a similar time period. And most of the time when a historic district is designated, they find architectural features that are necessary, or setbacks that are necessary, or landscaping elements that are necessary for the district to retain an overall cohesive character.
Hey, Joy, I've got to run to my other meeting, but I will be right back.
Okay, thank you, Rick.
Thanks. See you shortly.
Okay. Because the South Malala Prairie Historic Landscape District was not designated with specific characteristics or specific design guidelines, there's nothing to base your findings on today, because there's nothing cohesive that was identified for the South Malala Prairie Historic Landscape District, just that there are a lot of significant sites within this area.
So what made this site become a historic landmark?
The barn,
The barn
yeah.
and the business. What in the business side of it was from that period was part of it, wasn't it?
The farm complex, yeah. So you see the barn was significant in architectural details, and it was distinctive for its size and shape, and it had state of the art technology at the time, and it was an excellent example of a 20th century farm complex. And so this farm complex was designated. And so it's these structures within this little area, as well as the farm field, that was identified as the historic landmark.
So you're saying then that the farm in that period of what that farm represented was part of this reason for it being identified for national as a register place.
It is not on the National Register. It is just on our local landmark designation list. It is the farm, yeah. There was over 100 acres identified as part of the site for the historic landmark. Yes.
The reason for asking the question is it the type of business and the business that it represented in that period of time that was important to be given this designation, historic designation?
In the land use application, or in the land use file, it indicated that it was the barn as well as the farm complex. You guys have seen farm complexes before, where it was the barn and the storage building and the corn crib and the home. And you have seen how they have changed through time. And this is one of those situations where it was the barn, and the barn was the significant, like the architectural significant structure, but there was also a historic home and a historic accessory structure, and there was the farm field. But that farm field was part of a Measure 49 claim that allowed the development of two-acre parcels. Even though it was listed as a historic landmark, two-acre parcels were carved out of the large farm to provide home sites through the Measure 49 claim process. The Measure 49 claim process is a state process that allows landowners to get some benefit back if they purchase the property prior to the restrictive zoning. So in this case, the property owner purchased it in the 70s prior to the exclusive farm use zone being placed on that property. And so the state authorized them to have 2 additional parcels and 2 additional dwellings.
And
And so, yeah,
from what I can gather, that the state doing that supersedes part of the Historic Review Board's oversight in ZDO 707, because there is a section in ZDO 707 that talks about subdividing and sectioning out property, but the state doing what the state did basically negated our ability to have any input on that score.
and that's true for our regulations as well. The Measure 49 claim and the state authorization trumps our restrictive zoning that is intended to protect farmland. Now, it did have the effect of clustering 2 small parcels up by the road. So the parcels are not in the middle of the farm field. They're not in the middle of the farm complex. They're over 1,400 feet from the historic structures. And so arguably you could say that the location of these 2 lots and the proposed home is the optimal location within the historic landmark.
I'm in the middle of the meeting.
I'll turn off your
Oh,
sound. Yeah, I get that completely, that the state basically inserted itself
Yes.
into
The
this whole,
people voted for it.
and muddied the waters for us considerably. It remains to be seen how many more of these crop up, but it muddied our waters.
Well, it was over 10 years ago, and we're seeing a lot of Measure 49 claims get developed. And, Sherry?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that Measure 49 was voted on by the people of the state of Oregon. The state did not come in and say we're in charge. The people said they're in charge, and they voted to allow all this.
Thank you for that historic context. I appreciate that. Yeah. And so it is in line with what the public wanted. And with the housing crisis, people all the time are saying, well, aren't you gonna allow me to develop homes on my exclusive farm use land? And we're not able to, because state law has very limited options for housing in the exclusive farm use land or zones. Anyway, so on, I don't know how well you can see. I'm gonna try to move my toolbar so that maybe you'll be able to see more. The blue line, it goes around the properties that were involved in the Measure 49 claim. The historic farm complex is right over here. The brown line that's underneath the blue line is the historic landmark. So it included this piece as well. Seen it through an aerial image, this is South Herman Road. This is the property that was considered in August, 2 acres. This is the 2 acres that is being considered tonight. And the historic complex with the barn and the home and the accessory structures are here. And the farm field that separates them, when I measured, is about 1,400 feet. So there's still historical farmland around the farm complex. The proposal before us tonight involves a driveway circling around to a garage that's tucked behind. South Herman Road is to the north, so the garage is not going to be visible from South Herman Road. From the road, you'll see vertical and horizontal siding. You'll see the gable roof. You'll see a home. From the historic landmark, you'll see the front of the home, and you will see a garage with a shed dormer on top. In 707, the new construction criteria guides the Historic Review Board to consider the design of the proposed structure and whether it's compatible with the design of the landmark building. Compatible, not the same. And whether it's compatible with the site or the district or corridor. And if there's any significant architectural features, details, or materials, they have to be compatible with the historic structure or the historic farm complex.
Yeah, the ordinance reads considering scale, style, height, and architectural detail and materials and colors.
Yes,
All subjective in nature. Because
absolutely.
they don't spell it out anywhere in the ordinance at all.
No. Sherry?
Yes, back to that August meeting where the other structure was approved. Was it compatible to this?
It was simpler and smaller in nature.
Okay.
in my opinion.
Thank you.
But it was also white. And, it was also not a split level or a flat roofed modern, structure. It had the roof pitch similar to this one.
Did it have that front gabled?
It had a front porch covered.
That sticks out on those pillars?
You want to see a picture from the August meeting?
Yes, if you have that on hand, I'd like to see it, because that was approved.
It was. And it would be good for you all to see it because,
They're gonna be in relatively close proximity to each other.
yes, they are.
But the ordinance doesn't cover that either.
No. All right.
That's it.
Similar.
Well,
Yeah.
Mhm.
it looks more like a farmhouse than the applicant's proposal for this one.
Yes,
It's simpler and smaller. So tonight, we are considering the applicant's proposal that is here. In August, Paul asked for more detail on what the historic house located at the farm complex looked like. And this was the best picture I could find, and it's from the 2007 survey. And I wasn't able to get any more detail using the aerial images that we have. And so this is the historic home that was not determined to have architectural significance, but had significance as being part of that farm complex about 1,400 feet away. You can see it here from the aerial image. This is the back of it, next to the barn. It is a beautiful barn.
but what it, excuse me, but what it does represent is that's more of a, what we would call a vernacular farmhouse in its design. So it appeared to have a 12-12 pitch roof. It was basically on a single plane on both sides, and then it had a type of a porch that was a shed roof porch,
Mm-hmm.
and the key thing too, also, it did not have an attached garage to it.
True.
Nope, it didn't.
And if we were to compare that to what is being requested, there's quite a bit of difference.
Joy, I'd like to point out just a technicality that I discovered in reading through the ordinance
Okay.
compared to your report. And I could be all wet, but you're citing 707.06, and I believe that in my copy of the ordinance, it's refers to that new construction is 707.07. And I don't know if that makes any difference in how you write this up ultimately.
Is, so 70706 may be the Historic Review Board review process. You may be correct, but it's, I'll double check.
It's just a technicality that it looked to me like it was just a slight error in
I
reading.
did copy and paste it from the code, so the language on your screen is from the
language-
code, and I know it's hard to see.
The language is correct. I'm not. arguing
Yes,
that, but I think it's 07, not 06.
and it might be. When
Any-
you said that, I was like, in my brain, I thought, is 06 the Historic Review Board review process? And it might be.
Yeah.
Anyway, in addition to considering whether it's compatible in scale, color, architectural features, with the historic structures and the historic landmark, site, you as Historic Review Board members, and me as staff are supposed to consider the location and orientation of the new structure to see if it's consistent and typical, for the location. Considering setbacks, distances between structures, location.